Goes on to say this in verse number 3. Watch closely. Verse number 5. I am the vine and you are the branches. He that abideth in me and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. He said, for without me you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered. Men gather them and cast them into the fire and they are burned. In other words, one that won't abide is discarded. Right? He goes on to say this in verse number 7. If you abide in me, here's how important it is, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will and it shall be done unto you. Do you understand this morning that the way we abide affects our prayer life? As a Christian, we have the ability or right to pray because of what happened at Calvary. But he said, if you're not abiding in me, don't expect me to hear your prayers and answer them. But if you do abide, if you fellowship with me, stay close, let me tell you what I want, and you comply. When you pray, I'll listen. And not only will I listen, but I'll answer. That's important, is it not? Watch what he says in verse number 8. Herein, he says, is my Father glorified that you bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. You know, we hear people say all the time, I sure do want to glorify God with my life. You want me to tell you how? Abide. Let him have his way. Let him lead your life. And as God changes you and I, we become a bright light to a lost and dying world, and God gets glory when that happens. Verse 9, as the Father hath loved me, Jesus said to the disciples, so have I loved you. Continue in my love. Now watch closely. Here comes some 1 John references. You ready? Verse 10, if you keep my commandments. Does that sound familiar? Didn't John say that again in 1 John? If you keep my commandments, he says, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. You say, whoa, Preacher Mike, I thought God loved everybody. God does love everybody. But what he's talking about is this right here. Let me ask you a question. Let's just say you got multiple children, right? You love them all. Which ones please you well? The ones that do what you tell them or the ones that rebel against you all the time? It ain't changing my love, but this one right here sure brings me pleasure because all I got to do is just speak and they comply. This one over here drives me crazy. Because no matter how much I talk, I'm as good to both kids. But I tell this one the same thing I told that one, and all I get is attitude and bad actions over here, right? And you're like, I love that kid, but just squeeze his neck off. Right? I'm not saying that's how God feels. I'm just saying it could be possible. All right, watch this. In verse number 11, he said, these things have I spoken unto you. Watch closely now, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. Where have I read that before? Well, in 1 John chapter 1, verse 4, John made it very clear that he was writing about fellowship for one reason, that their joy might be what? Full. Verse 12, this is my commandment. Oh, here we go again with another 1 John reference. That ye love one another as I have loved you. Now, is it any coincidence that this abiding business that John gets from Jesus through a sermon in John 15 shows back up in his letter? And in essence, he's stating the same things. And here's what it's basically saying in essence, Brother Chandler, that if we abide in him, listen to me now, get close to him, all that stuff he just mentioned that enhances our life for God and good will start to show. Amen. Can I say this? We can tell people all we want that we love Jesus. But the truth is, put us on mute. Watch our lives. And you can pin the truth. It's easy to give God lip service. Oh, I love. Yeah. Don't tell me you love your wife if you're not going to be faithful to her. Don't tell me you love your kids if you're not going to support them. Right? Don't tell me you're a golfer if I say you don't go play, you say I ain't got no clubs. Don't tell me you're a mechanic if you don't know where the carburetor is. We have this casual Christianity. Well, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. What does your life say? What does my life say? Because abiding is something that eventually produces some fruit in your life. Now go back to 1 John, and we'll settle down and stay there for the rest of the message. 1 John chapter 3, watch what he says here, because I'm going somewhere with this whole idea of how this abiding affects our future. He goes over in the next chapter, 1 John 3, starting in verse 2, watch what he says again. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. In other words, what he's saying is this, as you and I abide in him, he's changing us. We have no clue what we're going to end up in the end, but we want to be making progress along the way because Jesus is coming. And then in verse 3, he tells us how to know if we're complying or not. And he says in verse 3, and every man that hath this hope, what hope? The hope of his coming, in himself or in him purifieth himself even as he is pure. In other words, It's so easy for you and I, and it's so to talk about, Jesus could come today. If I were to say that in this service, how many of y'all believe everybody's hands go up? Brother Larry, if I knew for a fact he was coming today at 6 o'clock, what would I change? What would I deal with? Brother Chad, if I knew right now, if I had a revelation, and I'm not going to get one because only God knows. But if I had a revelation from the Lord and he said, I'm coming today at 6, tell my people. Who would we right now run out of this service and call? And say, I just want to let you know I'm sorry. I didn't want to have to face you at the judgment seat. What wrongs would we make right? What restitution would we make? Or what would we flood the altar with? I guarantee you this, if that was my message today, if I didn't open this Bible at all but come in here and said, Jesus is coming today at 6 o'clock, pianists would come. I promise you this, there wouldn't be nobody staying in their seat. Are you hearing what I'm telling you? Nobody stays in their seat. Everybody says, I got some stuff I want to get rid of right now because it's getting to get real. But I can't promise you he's coming today at 6. But you don't know if he's not coming today at 12:30. The question is this right here. If we're abiding in him, listen to me now, here's what we have as a mentality. I want to fellowship and stay as close as I can, deal with everything I can, because I may die today or he may come today, and I just don't know that part. But since I don't have a clue, I better be prepared either way. And he said, he that hath him hope is hoping himself, purify himself. Now here's a wonderful thing about this. Did you know that this is so important to him, the Father? That there is actually a crown. There's only 5 you can win as a Christian, but one of them relates to this, keeping your life clean by abiding close. Because in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, the Apostle Paul told young Timothy that he was ready to die. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, and he said, when I face the Lord because of how I've lived my life, he's going to give me a crown of righteousness. And he says he gives that not just to me only, but to everyone that, here's a key phrase, loves his appearing. What's he talking about in these 2 chapters? Loving the appearing of Christ. It means this. Paul said, look, I haven't lived my life haphazardly. I hadn't been up and down, I ain't in and out, in and out. I mean, I love God. God saved me. Since he saved me, I've been loving him and serving him when he deals with me. I do business over the sins he shows me in my life. I'm a serious believer. And because of that, he said, I got a real good suspicion when I meet him, I'll receive the